Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2025 release Best Wishes to All. It's a Shudder original and it's coming to Shudder on Friday, June 13th. So this is a no spoiler review since I'm putting it out before it even hits Shudder. So this one is written and directed by Yuta Shimotsu, who also did Best Regards to All, which I assume is kind of connected to Best Wishes to All, but not sure because I haven't seen it. This is a Japanese film, so just know for all the people who have problems with subtitles out there, this is a subtitled film. Although I do think it's worth watching, even if you kind of have to suffer through reading while you're watching the film a little bit. This is a low-budget independent film. You can obviously see that with the way it looks. They don't have like extravagant shooting locations or big budgets. You can definitely tell. But it is a pretty solid movie, and I would encourage people to, always not just support this particular film, but always support low budget independent film because it is very important, whether it's in the United States or abroad. Shudder original, again, coming Friday, June 13th. So quick synopsis of this one. It's about a girl. You get a beginning scene that kind of sets the tone of something that happened. There's a little bit off with this woman's childhood. She's a woman now, but it goes like back in time. And when she was young, she was living with her grandparents and she saw something, and it kind of then goes to present day, kind of jump forward. And she has been away from their house, but she's going back to visit because she's been studying in Tokyo to become a nurse. She's a grown up at this point. So she goes back, and things are kind of weird. She's running into people that she hasn't seen in a long time. She's seeing her grandparents for the first time in a long time. And just things don't seem the way they did before. And that moment of the weird thing that happened in her childhood is seeming to be a much bigger thing than she actually thought at the time. So there's a lot of things kind of going on there. But it's just kind of about her experience being back there, and that's kind of where I'm going to stop it because I don't want to say too much for anyone who's going to actually watch the film, which I would say, obviously, do it. So again, the opening scene is slow, and then it hits you with that little bit of intrigue right before it ends up cutting to the title, so you get that little kind of weird moment like I was talking about in the main character's past. It does kind of telegraph how the film is going to end up going. Pacing wise for the rest of it. It is a little bit slow. It is kind of more of a leisurely pace type film, but there is enough interesting stuff going on, and I do think that they kind of keep you wanting to know what's next, and also just what's the underlying thing behind all of the kind of weirdness that this main character is experiencing going back home. And there is some stuff that actually, when you really think about it, is kind of relatable, and I'll kind of talk about that at the very end. Immediately, it feels that there's a focus on the dynamics between younger and older generations. There is a decent focus on this of, like, older generations and kind of what they're expecting from younger generations. It's kind of like the whole, like, societal hierarchy type thing. Which, isn't just a thing in Japan. It happens everywhere in every single country. There's always, especially in the United States, because that's where I'm from, I'll speak to that. There's always this issue of like, what is expected from the older generations of the younger generations, and then the younger generations kind of being like, hey, well, we would like to kind of forge our own way and kind of live our own lives and figure out what we want to do instead of just fitting into these boxes that you guys have constructed for yourselves and seem to be wanting to place on every generation after you. So it's kind of feels a lot like one of those types of things that's kind of going on early on in the film. Everything is made to look pretty drab. This is one of the things that I really don't like with a lot of horror films nowadays, especially low budget independent horror films. I don't know why we do this, but they choose very drab color palettes, and it's not that it's an individually bad choice, because it can help to kind of like give that feeling of things being very somber, very dour, things like that. But it just gets to me because it's done so much. It's really overly cliche at this point, unfortunately. But then again, I'm watching a film from Japan, so I don't know if that's the case for the overwhelming body of low budget independent Japanese horror films. I just don't know that. I just know in the United States it definitely is, and kind of internationally it seems to be as a whole. But yeah, just a small thing for me. They make things feel off with how some of the acting is done, but also how they end up shooting things. Like things seem a little bit askew. They give you a little bit of like kind of slow camera movements, like more kind of long shots with like people looking kind of small in that shot, and so you feel like a little bit of a small person in a bigger world that just feels weird, and it's kind of like they're a little bit lost. But the acting, the dialogue, and how people are acting is kind of the primary way that this like really off feeling is done, which is very effective for the film in my opinion. The main character definitely feels like she's in a foreign land, even though this is where she grew up. And I think this is something that a lot of people end up experiencing, to differing degrees when they're younger and then they end up growing up and then they kind of come back to where they grew up, whether it's just talking about their specific, family home or the whole community. Things don't feel the way they did. And part of the reason is, you were much younger then, you weren't the same person that you ended up becoming as you got older. Your life experiences were very limited at that point, and then you went on to have more life experiences, and now you see things a little bit more for what they actually have been and were versus what you thought they were at that point, because of that was your entire world when you were younger. You went out and you had more experiences, so that type of thing you're definitely feeling with the main character. And it just makes it feel like, oh, she's coming back and she should feel comfortable because this is home. But at the same time, she just doesn't. Like, it feels like this is someplace else that she's never been before, even though she has. There's an eye scene that might be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people. Actually, there's two. They're not super intense, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who really can't handle watching anything having to do with eyes in horror films, and it just becomes a little bit too much for them. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there just in case people are super sensitive to it. It gets kind of unsettling at times, and that's mainly based off of like how the acting is done. Also, the score really does help with this. I love the composition of the score. It's very minimalist in how it's composed, and it's not overused either. So I think the score and the role it ends up playing with making things feel super off is really, really important. Plus, like I said, I love the composition of the score being very minimalist. They don't go over the top. They don't scream at you with the score. So I love the way the score was done and used. Another thing is the performances are quite good. Whole cast did a very good job with what they had. And yeah, thumbs up on that one. And the ending's pretty solid. I didn't love the ending, but I liked the ending. I thought it was pretty decent, and yeah, I think a lot of other people will feel like it was pretty solid. So some final thoughts on this one, kind of wrapping things up. That this represents that moment you come back home as an adult and see your family and community for what it actually is, not how you remembered it as a child, because kind of like I was saying before, like, you kind of have, those rose-colored glasses on when you're a child because that's all you know. And then at some point in your life, you hit that moment where you're just like, oh, this isn't necessarily normal, or this isn't necessarily a good thing with my family or my community or whatever. I remember having those types of like, oh my gosh, moments as I grew up. It was when I was in college, really. And because you've been away from it, and then you can kind of see it with like clear eyes as an adult. The other thing is it's also about expectations of society and how it can feel to want to be someone different. And that goes back to the whole thing I was talking about in the beginning about that kind of, the older generations kind of creating these boxes to live in that they then want to put all the younger generations into, that type of thing. So overall, I thought it was a pretty solid film. I was between going with 3 and 3.5 stars. I don't think it's quite to 3.5 for me, so I am going to go with 3 stars officially, but know that it's on the line for me. Basically, if I did quarters, I'd do 3.25, so I was almost at the 3.5, but I'm gonna go officially with a 3. Do check this one. Do check this one out. Also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That is a free way to support me. Also, the thumbs up on the video helps with that YouTube algorithm, so that helps me as well. If you want to get a little bit more involved and don't mind pitching in a few bucks per month, I do have memberships for the channel that get you perks at 3 different levels for a nominal fee each month. So there is a link in the description. You can go ahead and check that out and see if it's anything you're interested in, because that stuff is appreciated. And also hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I put up new videos, because if you watch videos relatively quickly after they have been published, it does help with gaining traction as well. So the thumbs up helps with that type of stuff, but also just watching it and also watching the entire video. A lot of people don't necessarily know that. Going all the way through a video helps it out a lot more than just watching a portion of it, giving it the view, and then heading out. So that's all stuff you can do to help if you feel like doing it. But regardless, thank you for taking your time to watch this, and until next time, keep it brutal.